My name is Bradford Coleman. I am a staff counselor at the VSU Counseling Center, and today's presentation is going to be about finding balance. It is part 3 of the Graduate Student Wellness Workshop series. Let's begin. Some of the workshop objectives are to examine common pressures facing graduate students, to determine values to help you succeed in graduate school, discovering the work-school balance, warning signs of stress and burnout, and self-care. Common pressures and beliefs. So these are common pressures facing graduate students that are external. None of this is probably new to you. So we have work. A lot of graduate students are having to juggle work and studying. Debt. So whether there's student loans, private debt, that's usually hanging over a lot of people. Also, children might be in the mix. So balancing your duties as a father or mother, as an employee, and as a student. You know, you throw romance in there as well. Who doesn't want that, you know? So how can you maintain those relationships? That was discussed in a previous part of this series. And of course, money. You know, and then the job market. So what are your prospects finding gainful employment after you graduate? So all these are sort of external pressures and things that might weigh heavily on you as a graduate student. There are also internal pressures. And so these are sort of pressures or expectations that you might have for yourself, thoughts and beliefs. And some of them as listed, you can see here. The belief that there's no time, right? So there's no time to get anything done. I have to keep going. There's no time to adjust or look at my schedule. I'm out of control. I feel out of control. And so that's one belief. Another belief is I have to do well. And so there's that really rigid thinking and sort of perfectionistic perhaps. So I have to do well on this exam. I have to make all of this work or else. And then, you know, you have to kind of ask yourself, or else what? You know, so kind of examine that belief a little bit. Also the belief that people will be disappointed in me, you know, if I don't do blank. You know, if I don't succeed, if I don't follow through with juggling work and graduate school together. If I have to take a little time off, what will people say? And then also the I can suffer through it and I'll just crash later. So if I can just get through this exam, if I can just get through this class, I'll be able to crash later, I'll be able to find balance later, but just right now is not a good time. And so the kind of the drawback to some of these beliefs are that you can sustain your way of managing throughout the course, throughout your time in graduate school. And for a lot of students, that's not possible and that's not helpful. And so you have the internal beliefs, you have the internal pressure, and then you have the external pressure. And you combine both of these together, and it can really overwhelm students, it can really overwhelm you, and make you feel completely out of control. And so today's workshop, we're going to examine how you can find balance. One way of finding balance is to first look at your values and your priorities. So this is kind of going to be an exercise that's going to help you to narrow down what's most important for you at this stage in your life. And that's what we're really going to talk about. At this stage in your life, as a graduate student, your priorities or values might need to change. They might need to be adjusted briefly. And so while you're in school, let's reassess what they are and help you determine what's most important for this moment. So if you have a moment and you have perhaps a sheet of paper or just a good memory, let's go ahead and start this exercise. So this is a list of values, and it's not an exhaustive list. If you want to do a little bit more research, you can look into doing a personal values assessment or an inventory. But for today's presentation, this is the list that was selected. And so let's begin. First, select 8 of these values and priorities that are most important for you. I'll give you just a few seconds to select 8. Just a few more seconds. Perhaps write them down or just hold them in your memory. Okay, now that you have 8 selected, I'm going to make it a little bit more difficult for you. So, of those 8, I want you to narrow it down to 5. So, from those 8 that you have selected, eliminate a few, right down to 5. So, what can you do without? Perhaps X those out, circle them, right through them. Okay, I'm going to make it a little bit more difficult, even more so. Okay, so now of those 5 that you've narrowed it down to, I want you to narrow it down to 3. Okay, so 3 values, 3 priorities that are most important to you right now during your time as a graduate student. Do you have your 3? Okay, I hope you do. If you don't just yet, pause the video and think through it a little bit more. But once you have your 3, we can move on. Okay, so assuming that you have your 3, what I want you to do is kind of perhaps have 3 columns. And I want you to write each one down in a column. So value 1, value 2, and value 3. They don't have to be ranked in any priority. So it's not about hierarchy. Okay, so once you have your 3 different values and you have them listed, let's say your value was friendship. You want to ask yourself, what is my short-term goal? So if I value friendship, my short-term goal is, an example, I will see this friend once a week. I will commit to perhaps having lunch with this friend 2 times a week. Or I will get together on Saturdays. I will protect that time with my friends on Saturday. And that won't change. That's a short-term goal. Perhaps a long-term goal with friendship is to just deepen a friendship. You know, a long-term goal could be we're going to go on a trip once we graduate. Another example could be health or wellness. So like a physical well-being. So let's say if that's your value 2, a short-term goal could be, I will get to the gym 3 days of the week. I will commit 45 minutes 3 days a week to my wellness, whether I'm doing yoga or I'm on the cardio, I'm lifting weights, whatever it is. And a long-term goal is maybe I'm planning to run a marathon. Or maybe I want to maintain my weight as I get through this difficult period as a graduate student. Maybe I want to lose a little weight. So a long-term goal could be I'm going to lose 10 pounds or 25 pounds. So once you have your values and priorities listed here, and it's going to be really important to make them very succinct and to have your goals, you're going to use this to help direct you kind of as a map throughout your time in graduate school. So you're going to refer back to this. How am I falling in line with my values? How am I keeping my priorities in check so that I can live the life that I want to live and I'm not just going to get steamrolled by all the responsibilities facing me? How can I stay true to myself through my personal values? That's what this exercise is about. Okay, and once you have those 3 values, we're going to talk about how you can communicate with other people to make sure that you protect those values and really honor yourself and honor them as well. So perhaps you've seen this before in the different styles of communication, but I want to go over this again in the context of balance, in the context of your value system. Okay, so first let's look at passive. So we've all kind of perhaps seen this, or maybe we are this person. Maybe we communicate in a very passive way. And just some of the aspects of that is that you're going to speak pretty softly. Maybe perhaps you're even afraid to speak up. Your posture might be slouched. You might kind of withdraw from others. You kind of pretend to get along even if you kind of disagree or internally something's not sitting right with you. Maybe you value yourself less than you value others. Perhaps you sacrifice, quote unquote, for others. Okay, so if you communicate in a very passive way or move through life in a very passive way, it's not very likely that you're going to reach your goals. it's very likely that perhaps other people might be steamrolling you. They might they might assert themselves and their goals ahead of yours. Okay, and so let's go over to aggressive. Kind of on the flip side of that, is someone who communicates or moves through life in an aggressive manner. So this person might interrupt others. He or she might speak very loudly. He or she might intimidate others, perhaps with their body language or their words. They might be controlling, and they might only consider themselves. So this person might reach his or her goals, but perhaps in a hurtful way. He or she might value himself or herself more than others. Let's talk a little bit about passive aggressive. Now, this is a little different. I don't know, this one doesn't always get a lot of attention. And so it's kind of the worst parts of both passive and aggressive, right? So often this person might use silence. He or she might ignore other people. They might be difficult to read. They might have hidden intentions. They might use a lot of sarcasm, a lot of guilting. Okay, so these three styles, passive, aggressive, and passive aggressive, are not the healthiest way to assert yourself and establish balance in your life and in your relationships. So they're probably going to leave you either feeling run over. They're going to either leave you feeling like you're taking advantage of other people, you're being really harsh to others, and perhaps with a bit of a negative or bad reputation. Or in passive aggressive, where there's a lot of anger, but it's right underneath the surface, so you're really not being true to who you are and what you want. So the best way to communicate with others and for balance really is to be assertive. All right, and so when you're assertive, it's going to help you reach your goals in a positive way. So you're valuing yourself equal to others. So you're taking in perhaps what they're saying, their wants and desires, and you're comparing that to what you want or desire, and you're looking for that compromise. You're looking for a balance. So you're going to use a conversational tone. You're going to share your progress, have a relaxed stance. You're going to speak openly and assertively. You're going to maintain eye contact. All right, so once you can communicate in an assertive manner, that's going to help you really establish boundaries within your relationships and help you find balance. So you have your values. So now how can you enforce your values? You're going to do that by communicating with others. And this is going to be perhaps a little difficult for a lot of people because it might be seen as rude, but what you're really doing is you're weighing yourself just as valuable as you're weighing them. And you're considering yourself to be just as important, your wants and your needs. Okay? And so it might take a little bit of practice to say no to someone when they're asking you to do more than what you want to. So rather than be passive or passive aggressive and say yes and then not do it, right? So that's passive aggressive. You could just say, no, that's not going to work for me right now. And you can have that conversation and that dialogue with people. You're going to be able to sit down and be able to say, okay, these are my values. Does this fall in line with my values? How can I work with this other person so that we both can gain? And it really is more of like an attitude shift as well. So there's the communication part, but there's also the attitude shift where you're not going to be more aggressive, you're not going to be passive, and you're going to really just assert yourself in a confident manner. Because you're confident about what you value, you're confident about where you're going, and you're confident about what works for you right now in this moment and what doesn't work. Okay, so moving forward to balance at work and school. So if you have your values established and you have an idea of how you can kind of adjust perhaps your attitude and your confidence and be able to communicate, so what does that look like in a work setting or perhaps a school setting? So these are just some ideas on helping you to find balance and really just to kind of spark you in thinking about that. So perhaps let's assume that you're working and you have a family life as well and you're a full-time student. So, you're just about perhaps pulling your hair out. It's really going to be important for you to take some of these ideas, find out what works for you, and implement it and follow it through. So the first bullet point is perhaps, let's say you're having some trouble at work and you're really feeling out of balance. Maybe be really proactive in speaking with your boss about finding a way that you can find more balance at work. The first bullet is about starting work perhaps a little earlier so that you can get home a little earlier. Maybe that's going to alleviate any sort of childcare issues that you have. Maybe that's going to help you avoid any sort of commute and wasted time in traffic. Maybe it's going to help you get to that study group that you really need to get to, or to get to that tutor that stops tutoring at 5 p.m. Finding a way. Maybe that's avoiding, maybe moving around your lunch hour, having a working lunch a few days a week. So being proactive and speaking with your boss about ways that you can adjust your time at work, so that you can really meet the needs that you have outside of work. The second bullet point, perhaps search for a way to temporarily cut back on your commitments at work. Maybe you're involved in 3 or 4 committees, but only one is mandatory. Maybe there's an event that is really not required, that you kind of regularly attend. Again, speak with your boss about ways that you can show that you're committed to your job and you're not slacking, but ways that will really help you find more balance perhaps at work and at school. So having that conversation, again, this is going to require that you're going to be assertive and to know what really is most important to you while you're in school. Maybe you're working, this is the third bullet point, maybe you're working in a job in which you can exchange a work shift with someone, maybe split a shift with someone, so perhaps you can get home earlier. Maybe you can propose a way that you can provide something for them in exchange for them helping you out. Sort of that partnership, and you guys are helping each other. And so that would be really helpful. You have to think creatively. And again, I'm not sure of what your job or your job setting is, so this is going to require you to think a little bit about how you can implement some of these ideas. Okay, so maybe you can speak with your professor about the potential to adjust deadlines or combine assignments. Maybe you have your syllabus and you've looked over it and you said, okay, this seems very similar to this. Both of these assignments, there's a little bit of an overlap. Maybe I can talk to my professor and see if I can combine both of these assignments, and that would allow me to save a lot of time. Maybe there's an assignment or an exam coming up and there's a deadline with work as well. Is it possible for me to perhaps turn in this assignment later or perhaps before? That works for me. So again, being proactive, you going up and speaking with your professor about how you can adjust, if possible, some of the assignments for the class, so that it's all not going to come down on you, come crashing down on you. Again, speak with your professor, inquire about attendance policies and special accommodations. Perhaps you don't need to be there every day. Maybe you can just download the PowerPoint, or maybe there's an audio portion that you can listen to. So just inquire about that. What does that look like for your schedule? And again, special accommodations. I've known some students that have younger children and they have a really difficult time with childcare. Maybe if the children can be behaved and not cause too much of a distraction, would it be possible for the children to maybe sit in the class? It really just takes a lot of proactive thinking and assertive communication for you to get out and propose some of these ideas. Seek to perhaps combine your outside and work interests on school projects. So maybe you're doing something, maybe there's a report at work, and it's going to really easily coincide with something that you're doing in your classroom. Figure out a way to make both of those gel together. That would save you a lot of time. So take the initiative, speak up. And a tip that I always tell everyone is to not propose a dilemma without necessarily offering a solution as well. So have a few kind of ideas that you can toss around. If you have a problem, speak to your boss, speak to your professor, but also have 1 or 2 different solutions. So then that way they're probably more likely to agree because you've already done the heavy lifting. You've already done all of the thinking for them. So these are just sort of ideas that can help you balance work and school, and just to kind of get you thinking about what that might look like. Okay, so let's talk about stress and burnout. All right, so burnout can affect you when you reach sort of an emotional exhaustion. Okay, you're 0 out of 10, you're 0 out of 100, you don't have a lot to give. Okay, so being aware of the warning signs will help you to be able to proactively manage your fatigue stress and handle burnout better. Okay, and so these are some of the signs of burnout. You know, maybe you've noticed them in your life or in the lives of someone perhaps that you care about. So, insomnia. Maybe you're having trouble falling asleep. Maybe you're exhausted, but you can't fall asleep. You're sitting in bed, wasting minutes or perhaps hours thinking about 30 different things that are due. So many different deadlines, okay? Maybe you're experiencing forgetfulness and you're overlooking a lot of small details, and there's just overall a general lack of focus. Maybe your immune system is weakened. There's sort of an increased illness going on. Maybe you're becoming more and more sick more often. Perhaps you're dealing with anxiety, a lot of worry, feeling on edge, you know, sort of deep and long exhales. You know, your body's telling you something is not right. There's muscle tension, body aches, physical pain, and inability to relax. Maybe you're just really angry at other people too, and you're not quite sure why. Maybe that could be a sign of stress and burnout. You know, snapping at others, perhaps having verbal outbursts, a lot of arguments, tension. Irritability, again, being on edge, easily annoyed by things that perhaps wouldn't have annoyed you before. Little patience. Maybe you don't have a lot of patience with your children. You know, so really that irritability, look out for that one. Depression, feeling trapped, hopeless, sad, and or overwhelmed. So again, it can affect you physically, it can affect your body, it can also affect you emotionally. So these are just a few of the signs. Again, this is not an exhaustive list of some of the signs of stress and burnout, but if you resonate with about 3 or 4 of these on a consistent basis, these are some of your warning signs that maybe you need to look at how you can find a better balance and what you can do to better care for yourself. So what is self-care? So there's kind of 2 different parts of it. So self-care part 1 is really examining your basic needs. So these are actions that you're going to take to meet your daily needs, such as washing clothes, feeding yourself, bathing, cutting hair, keeping your home neat, attempting to eat a balanced diet. So if you're finding these activities too daunting or difficult, you may be dealing with depression. You may have high levels of anxiety or burnout, perhaps even something more severe. So on the basic level, if you're not able to take care of yourself, that's a huge warning sign that you need to seek help. Okay, and then on the balance side, so these are activities that you can do. So balance your well-being, your emotional well-being, to help you relax and recharge. So when we say self-care, we're talking about everything necessary to make you kind of get out into the world and feel good about yourself, taking care of yourself, coming out in clean clothes, you know, making sure that you're well fed, you know, and a healthy diet. But then also self-care is finding that balance through different activities and ways ways you can relax and recharge. So these are going to be activities that are going to help you care for yourself. If you're finding it difficult to do some of these activities, things that perhaps you once loved to do over a prolonged period of time, you know, that's not good. And that could lead to everything from exhaustion, perhaps even a hospitalization, and overall poorer health. That's poor heart health as well. So an unhelpful belief there is, I have to sacrifice for others, or I don't want to be selfish. You know, I have so little time and I want to give all of my time to my spouse, or I want to give all of my time to my children, or whatever the case is. And what you're really doing there is you're putting yourself last. And I always use the example of perhaps what happens when you fly. You know, and the flight attendant tells you to put on your mask in the case of an emergency. Put on your mask first, and then you can help put on the masks of others. So if you're not taking care of yourself, then it's going to be really difficult to take care of other people in the long run. Okay, and kind of just a continuation of that, I kind of use this glass here as an example. So where are you right now? You know, empty is at the very bottom there. And so there's a caution, you know, you have nothing to give to yourself. You have nothing to give to others. And that is a huge, dangerous place you don't want to be. So when you're down there, you want to make sure that you're going to follow through with some of the next things we're going to talk about and maybe possibly reach out for professional help. Perhaps if you're half full. So this is sort of a danger zone, is letting you know that, okay, I'm headed perhaps in a dangerous direction. I'm feeling a lot of pressure, and this is not something that I can sustain for very long. If you're full, you're going to be energized. You're going to be able to spill over and give to others. So ask yourself, where are you right now? And then ask yourself, where am I most of the time? So I might be empty right now, but most of the time I'm pretty full. Or vice versa. I might be full right now, but most of the time I'm really empty. Okay, I'm running on E and it's not good. Right now, I just had a really great weekend, 2 days, right, out of the semester, but most of the time I'm running on empty. Okay, so you really want to strive to find a balance. So this is Self-Care Continued. This slide is going to be a really quick and easy way to help you recognize some of your signs, set up some strategies, and have a game plan and a template of how you're going to act on those strategies and really forge balance in your life. Okay, so some signs of stress, and we talked about them. Maybe if you write it down, one to three, or perhaps even more, if it's fitting, signs of stress. Maybe you know that you're dealing with insomnia. Maybe you know that you've been very irritable and you're very angry. Okay, so that's giving you a little bit of a heads up that something is going on. Okay, and so now we move over to step 2, strategies. I would select one or two of these. So let's just select one. Let's say, okay, I'm going to journal. I love to write. Journaling really helps me kind of get a lot of my thoughts out of my head and onto a sheet of paper, and so I don't have to hold it all together. Okay, so you have journaling. Step 3, what will I specifically do? How, when, and where? Okay, ask yourself these questions and really be able to give yourself a solid answer. How will I journal? Okay, I need to go get a journal. I need to go get a composition notebook, something to write in. When? Okay, I really enjoy it at the end of the day when I'm kind of unwinding. It really helps me get to sleep. So I'm going to journal perhaps at 11 o'clock or right before bed. Where? I really like to do it in my bed. I have a lamp on, the lighting is really soothing, and it really just helps me recap everything of the day. Okay, so we have a good template right now. What you really want to do next, step 4, is kind of anticipate what are some of your barriers. So list 1 or 2 potential barriers. Okay, I have a young child. She will knock on my door whenever I close the door and I'm trying to journal. Okay, so what could be a solution? Perhaps you can try putting her to bed before you get into your journal. Or maybe you have some help at home and you tell that person, hey, this is my personal time, and we're going to kind of set some rules here. Don't bother daddy when he's in bed and he's journaling after this hour. Whatever it's going to take, imagine potential barriers and then come up with potential solutions so that this is going to help you follow through with your self-care strategies. All right, and then five, how will you measure progress? How will you know that you're managing your stress well? So maybe in your journal, have 5 days, have 5 work days, for each day. That's a way of measuring. And so when you flip back on each day, I need to have written a little bit on each day. Maybe ask for accountability from a friend or a significant other. Kind of ask me about it every few days, how it's going, kind of keep it fresh in my mind. And so these are strategies that will help you to find balance, that will be able to implement that as well, implement it. So not only find the balance, but to implement it and create actionable steps moving forward. Okay, so we examined some of the common pressures. We examined helping you find values and what's most important to you while you're a grad student, how to work out that balance as an employee, perhaps as a student, as a parent, as a spouse, some of the warning signs of stress and burnout, and then how you can care for yourself. I hope that this was helpful. So if you need any additional information, don't hesitate to reach us at the Counseling Center. I will put the links in the description below. Again, all counseling services are free and confidential to VSU students. We offer individual counseling, amazing groups, seminars, and workshops. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that this will help you succeed as a graduate student and find balance and sanity. Thank you.